I want you to think about your parents for a second. Whatever their financial situation was growing up, you probably told yourself you'd do it differently, that your generation was smarter, and that you had better tools to avoid their traps. But here is the uncomfortable truth. You are making the exact same mistake they did, just with a different app and a different cultural wrapper around it. Whether you realize it or not, you are currently navigating a consumption machine that is specifically engineered to ensure every dollar you earn is spent as quickly and as frictionlessly as possible. This video is about why every generation from Boomers to Gen Z falls for this identical trap, and how the top 5% of wealthy individuals use a completely different operating system to step around it. The mistake, stripped down to its skeleton, is that every generation finds a way to consume the present at the expense of the future. The mechanism changes, but the outcome is always the same. A population that earns more than enough, but keeps almost none of it. For the baby boomers, the trap wore the costume of consumer credit. They were the first generation to treat revolving debt as a lifestyle tool, rather than a warning sign, financing houses larger than they needed, because they believed rising incomes would always outpace their borrowing. Today, nearly half of boomers are approaching retirement with little to no savings, discovering far too late that figuring it out often means financial dependence. Gen X watched their parents and thought they were being more careful, but they fell for dual-income lifestyle inflation. As two-income households became the standard, they engineered their lives to consume both salaries, buying homes and cars that required both partners to work just to service the debt. When the 2008 crisis hit, they realized they had zero structural resilience. Despite earning six-figure incomes for decades, the median Gen X 401k balance at the end of 2025 was just $67,100. Their mistake was assuming the double income would always be there, spending the present while ignoring the math of the future. Millennials were supposed to reject materialism, but they simply replaced it with experiential spending. They swapped big houses for boutique coffee, travel, and festivals, reframing consumption as self-care and personal growth. It felt enlightened, but it was actually the same mistake wearing yoga pants. They have the Instagram memories, but their retirement accounts are thin, and their credit card debt is higher than Boomers was at the same age. Gen Z is now facing the most sophisticated version of the machine yet: frictionless micro-consumption. Through buy now, pay later, BNPL services, one-click purchases, and gamified investing that feels like a slot machine, the economy has removed the cognitive friction that gives your brain time to evaluate a purchase. They are spending $42 on DoorDash 4 times a week, leaking money through dozens of tiny holes that feel too small to matter. To break this cycle, you have to realize that the American consumer economy is a $28 trillion machine designed to extract your wealth. The machine doesn't want you to save. Saving is the opposite of what the engine needs. To fight back, you need to reintroduce cognitive friction into your life. This is why the Japanese habit of Kakeibo, a 120-year-old handwritten ledger system, is so effective. By physically writing down every purchase, you force your brain to process the choice consciously. When you tap a card, your brain barely registers it. When you write down DoorDash, $42, want, your hand tells your brain something an app never could. Practitioners find this simple act can reduce unnecessary spending by up to 35%. Another core pillar of the wealthy is the philosophy of Harahachi Bu, which means eating or spending until you are only 80% full. In a culture that encourages us to supersize and consume until we're at 120% capacity, the top 5% of earners treat 80% as their ceiling. They live on 80% of their income and leave the remaining 20% as margin. Margin is where wealth lives. It's the difference between retiring anxious and retiring comfortable. On a $60,000 salary, this 6-point gap between the average 4% savings rate and a 20% rate is the difference between saving $293,000 and $1.47 million over 30 years. The wealthiest people don't just save, they obsess over the gap between income and spending. They understand that income is just the water flowing through the pipe, while net worth is how much stays in the bucket. Visible spending tells you nothing about financial health. The person driving the newest leased BMW might be 6 months away from bankruptcy, while the person in the 2020 Toyota Camry like Diane, in our sources, is quietly sitting on a $1.3 million portfolio. Diane didn't out-earn her peers. She simply protected the gap and let boring consistency do the work. The consumption machine works because it makes spending painless and invisible. Wealth building, by contrast, is slow, intentional, and often boring. It requires the habit of choke and saving first and spending what remains, rather than hoping there is something left at the end of the month. When you automate your investments to leave your account the day after payday, you break Parkinson's law, which states that spending expands to fill available income. You adjust your life to the remaining 80%, and because the human brain is remarkably adaptable, you stop feeling the sacrifice within a few months. True financial literacy is the only antidote to generational traps. It is the understanding that a dollar saved today is worth far more than a dollar earned tomorrow because it arrives without tax, without effort, and with decades of compounding potential. The machine will always offer you a new costume, a new way to treat yourself or invest in a trendy asset. But the math of wealth has not changed in a century. Build the gap, protect the gap, and let time do the rest. The parking lot will eventually forget what car you drove, but your investment account will remember every dollar you gave it for the rest of your life.